Right now, we are taking a look at major news and the fact that news right now, CHBC AM 1150, ignores 1 in 5 Kelowna people going hungry. It's snowing right now in Kelowna, British Columbia on this day. We've got a major snowstorm out there. We still have 1,500 homeless. 1,500 homeless people right here in Kelowna and 200 beds at the shelter.
And yeah, that's about it.
Yep. So, of course, CHBC, the City Hall, is not considering this a disaster because they consider the homeless an eyesore.
Yes, they're just a part of society that we'd rather just forget about, sweep aside.
Yes, yes. No, we don't want to pay attention to the poverty happening here because there's a new phone to market.
However,
of course,
it's not just here that's occurring.
I know. Okay, so amazing. Hurricane Sandy comes through, okay, and this is directly relatable. If you ever wonder how municipalities behave and why they're so irresponsible, take a look at FEMA. Okay, New York. That was crazy.
Well, they were there. FEMA was there, and then the new storm is hitting New York at this moment, a nor'easter, where the temperature is going to drop furiously, and there's lots of snow. And FEMA closed their relief centers due to the weather.
Now, hang on a second. This is the Federal Emergency Management Authority, okay, that closed its centers due to inclement weather.
Yeah. And meanwhile, there's 160,000 people without power.
I know. Not only do they need the services, but, of course, what do we have? Once again, human beings stepping up and saving the day. It happened in Greece, it's happened in Haiti, and it's happening in New York. I want you to check this out.
I do want to talk now about the resurgence of a movement many people have labeled as long gone, insignificant, even dead. Members of the Occupy Wall Street movement mobilized immediately in the wake of Hurricane Sandy and have proven that not only are they alive and well as a movement, they have become incredibly significant to those hurt, those were hurt most, and incredibly vital as a force of good in communities like Astoria, Brighton Beach, East Village, Jersey City, the Lower East Side, Red Hook, Rockaway, Sunset Park, and Staten Island. Here's a look at some of those volunteers in action at St. Jacoby in Sunset Park, Brooklyn.
People are pulling together things to donate at Red Hook, Rockaways. I think this batch is about to go to Coney Island for dinner.
Well, essentially, these volunteers have set up meeting places and have organized orientations for volunteers to give out food, water, first aid, even to pump water from people's homes and to help with the cleanup of the massive amount of rubble and trash left in Sandy's wake. Remember, this is a group that has always spoken out and worked in defense of homes being destroyed, though before it was not by a hurricane, but by mass foreclosures and corruption. Still, their presence has been extremely valuable, and I want to speak now to Sarah Jaffe, an associate editor for Alternate. And Sarah, you have seen some of these operations firsthand. Tell me what you've witnessed.
It blows my mind. I mean, they're they were always good. And the most impressive thing that happened at Zuccotti Park was always the really strong infrastructure, the ability to feed people, to clothe people, to make sure people's basic needs were met was always a skill that this movement had. And now they're putting it into practice in a way that, I mean, nothing else in the city is even coming close to what they've been doing.
Yeah, certainly the need seems to be growing here. And you just see, I mean, hundreds of people really have come out. And of course, they're not all people who were at Zuccotti Park. A lot of them just volunteers wanting to help it. But those sort of central in the Occupy movement seem to have sort of taken the lead in organization. I mean, do you think that sort of what they learned and what they did during Occupy Wall Street sort of got them ready for this?
Absolutely. I mean, they had a camp in a park, and we're managing to feed and keep warm and clothe hundreds of people who are sleeping in a park. Those are skills that absolutely translate to this.
I know, of course, the Red Cross is central to the relief effort, but I know they've been focusing on collecting funds. They've said that that's what they need most. But still, there are people who need things like food and blankets and clothing. Sarah, in your experience, who are these people that are most in need?
There are people out there whose entire homes were flooded, whose cars were flooded. Everything, in some cases, they had is ruined. And those people kept asking us, where's FEMA? Are you with FEMA? Are you with the Red Cross? Where are these people? There weren't anybody from the major disaster organizations there. It was community groups and it was Occupy that was in these spaces instead. And so when you say the Red Cross is central to this effort, so far I haven't seen the Red Cross doing much of anything.
Talk a little bit about the similarities with the Occupy Wall Street, central messages and how these apply, to what we're seeing with this devastation from Superstorm Sandy.
We need to talk about who's responsible for climate change, and we need to talk about the same big corporations that get traced back up that the Occupy Wall Street movement was protesting in the first place.
Real quick, Sarah, we're almost out of time, but in your reporting on this, what have some of these Occupy Sandy organizers said are the plans?
They want to keep this going, and they want to keep it growing, and they want to fold it back into what they always saw as a movement. My favorite line from the piece that I wrote for Jacobin was from Julieta Salgado. She was one of the first people to go out on Tuesday night, and she said, "We're doing what we expected us to do, but nobody else did." They knew that they were capable of doing this kind of work, and when they're demonstrating that they are, other people are willing to join it.
Yeah, absolutely. And quite a few people are surprised, but, I think it's important to point out, and I think it's a good thing to show that this is going on, that Occupy Sandy is certainly has become a vital force, a vital part of the recovery efforts in the New York and New Jersey areas. We thank you for your firsthand reporting, Sarah Jaffe, Associate Editor of Alternet in New York City.
And making a solid point that that's what Occupy is about. If you remember, a good deal of what Occupy was about was feeding the homeless. Of course, City Hall standing firmly against anything to do with feeding the homeless.
Didn't they make laws against feeding the homeless for health reasons?
Yeah, I know. It's amazing. First of all, we got health code laws saying that churches cannot have potluck dinners. That is an amazing health code that went through about 4 years ago. Now, or I think it was 5 years ago. Check my facts on that, though.
But you know what? In New York, people are eating out of dumpsters right now.
Well, but that's okay because people aren't feeding them. We're not in the danger of actually feeding homeless people at that point, right? Okay, we don't want to actually do something right for humanity.
No.
That's something to avoid. Remember, we can't feed these people. Then they won't be scrambling for dollars that aren't there. Okay, something else happened too.
November 5th, Guy Fawkes Day.
Guy Fawkes Day came and went. Of course, major media ignored everything that was happening around the world on this day.
But Anonymous put out an operation calling it Operation V for Vendetta.
Yes.
To reenact the scene that was in the movie.
Yes, and we're going to be talking about the masks we will be wearing at unannounced gatherings here in Canada in the future. But I want you to check this out.
Because this was on no other media.
Hundreds joined a demonstration in central London organised by the internet group Anonymous. It was dubbed Operation Vendetta. As the citizens of the UK, the demonstrators felt they had a very personal vendetta against the people who run their country. They are angry about the British government's handling of the budget, the cuts in public services, and austerity programme.
Protesters here call themselves freedom fighters because they believe the government are trying to take away the freedoms and rights of the people. They believe their nurses, doctors, teachers and workers are being let down, sold out to the bankers.
No one wants to listen to us. Voting makes no difference. We vote and then they take us to wars we don't want. They tax us with things that aren't right. They take our money and give it to the bankers.
99% are being oppressed by the 1%.
Why do we pay? The poorest people pay 20% tax, while the richest people pay 1% tax or less.
They are not governing, they're looking after themselves. They're creating enormous amounts of wealth for themselves. And we're enslaved by the government. We're owned by the bankers. If the government defaults on their payments, who have they got as backer to cover that loan? Us, the people. We're enslaved. Why should we be enslaved? Why we're the only species on the planet that has to pay to live here, for God's sake?
The group Anonymous claim they have no official members and no hierarchy. They have thousands of followers on the internet. They question all authority and call for any authority to be held publicly accountable for their crimes against mankind. But this march is a lot more than UK government failure. Many here believe the British government is part of a global agenda to create wars and expand their hegemony. A YouTube video promoting the demonstration slams the government's incompetence and sent out a severe warning to the public.
New World Order, that's what they want. They want a new world order. The Zionists, the Luciferian worshippers, they couldn't give a about us. Right? That's why I'm here.
Do you think there'll be World War III soon? And who's...
They want to organise World War III. They've got a war with Iran. For nothing. Right?
Yep.
They're killing innocent kids. Innocent people. for money, for power. Yep. Enough's enough. We're sick. We're sick and tired, and that's why we're here today. To say f*** the 1%, we are the 99%.
Hassan Al-Khatib, Press TV, London.
I always liked it when they talked with their masks like this, right?
Yeah.
If you're listening right now, you realize that I'm talking with a mask on. Of course, if you can get a picture of this, no, we can't. But this will get me arrested in Canada. Okay? Now, that's
well, not just for walking around with it on, of course. You have to be taking part in a unlawful demonstration, an unlawful assembly, or a riot.
There they are. They've got masks on. They've got an assembly happening in the UK. Of course, it's the Guy Fawkes mask that's there for November 5th because we remember, too. But listen to what they had to say. This is the only species that has to justify its existence to a bank.
That has to pay to live.
Yeah, we have to pay to live. Where did that come in? When did this happen? Of course, I attribute this to the baby boomers who just simply assume that everything is going fine and they never questioned anything.
I blame the church.
Hey, let's blame the church. Do you want to blame the church today?
Blame the church because they were the real first hierarchical organization on earth, really, that was, responsible for taxing people.
Sort of.
Yeah.
I'm going to argue with you for a second because the government is only taking advantage of the church existence because the church creates a sense of order and morality about all the fascism, and that's the only thing the government does is it rides the coattails of that in order to inflict the fascism. Okay, and that, I would say, would be what Canada is. I blame the banks. They make up money out of nowhere, charge interest on that. And, of course, blaming the banks is something that we can all do because they make up money out of nowhere.
Yeah, I know. They don't really provide any services.
No, and then, of course, they don't pay income tax right here in Canada. Canadian commercial banks like the Royal Bank and the CIBC do not pay income tax, but they freeload on our policing, our streets, all of our sewer systems.
By the way, after the disaster in New York, you know what the first part of town that got its lights on was?
What?
Wall Street.
Yeah.
Goldman Sachs. The lights were on at Goldman Sachs.
How did I know that was going to happen, right? Okay, let's, but you want to cover it? Let's do this before the break.
Okay, we got time?
Yeah, let's run this one.
Okay, there's a gentleman in Britain who's tired of the banks.
Banking malpractice, excessive risk-taking, and bonuses paid for out of taxpayer bailouts. It's little wonder that people's patience with their banks has run out. But if not the global financial giants, where do you entrust your hard-earned cash? RT's Laura Smith meets one British man who thinks he's got the answer.
Hello. Thank you, Dave. Well done. Thank you.
Dave Fishwick is a cheeky northern charmer. He made his fortune selling minibuses in his hometown of Burnley. But instead of fancy holidays and expensive cars, when the credit crisis hit, Dave wanted to give something back. So he decided to open a bank.
It's late 2008, early 2009. My minibus customers were coming along to me to get funding for their buses, as they had done for the last 15 years. And overnight, that just stopped. The banks just stopped lending to the bus customers. And I'm thinking, have they done something wrong? Have they made a mistake? Have they not paid the gas bill or electric bill or phone bill? It's not the people that's had the problem. It's the banks that have the problem.